Well, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. Welcome to Zyxel's Tech Talk. My name is Tri Nguyen. I am the sales manager and product manager here at Zyxel North America. Good to have you joining us on this topic today. We're going to be discussing some of the new products that we just recently launched and announced called the XMG, and I'm excited to share why multi-gig switches is obviously super important in making a big splash into the industry. Especially with networks going through a lot of upgrades and a lot of applications that are coming into play, that people are starting to accept that. And even with continued WAN connections going up as well, people and their devices and applications are expecting that the infrastructure itself is going to be able to handle those kinds of speeds and bandwidth. So I'm looking forward to talking about that. Hopefully you'll find this webinar informative for you and helping to make decisions on why you should choose multi-gig switches moving forward, or at least to consider them as you develop or as you replace out existing infrastructures today. So I wanted also to make sure that this is an interactive kind of discussion. So if you want to ask any questions, feel free to use the Q&A section that you find in one of the boxes somewhere, one of the links there, and hopefully I can answer those as we go along. So just as a quick introduction to Zyxel, who we are as a company. If you don't know who we are Zyxel Networks, 30 plus years in the networking business since 1989, 100 million devices making connections worldwide with over 700 employees in all these different countries. Over 1 million businesses work smarter with Zyxel solutions today in 150 markets, including up to 500,000 now devices in our Nebula Cloud platform. So really a splash of momentum there in this cloud management platform that we'll talk to you about today as well. We're trusted to deliver connectivity and solutions to millions around the world. Some of these partners that we've worked with and continue to work with to provide solutions both on the networking side, the guest network access side, and really providing a solid infrastructure and solution connectivity for those types of applications that they deploy. We also partner with some industry leading partners for their solutions, using their solutions within our products. So integrating things like McAfee, WebRoot, Bitdefender into our security appliances, and working with some other key partners in delivering video and audio Pro AV over networking as well, and voice kind of applications. We are based out of the US in Anaheim, California, and our sales reps manage your accounts. So when you have any questions regarding pre-sales, post-sales, a partner program, any new customers you're bringing on board, projects that you're working on, we're here to help you and kind of help orchestrate that, come alongside you to making sure those gets handled there, even with distribution. So David, Andy, and Jacob are here to serve you. So please make sure you reach out to them if you haven't heard from them already. We are solutions driven with our partners because we make the hardware and software. We have our own R&D as well for these products. So it allows for us to get and implement feedback from you as partners, and providing new features, new functions, things that help you as a partner to deliver these solutions to your customers, making it easier, make it better. That's why we're here. We want to make sure that your life is as easy as possible, and providing a comprehensive portfolio, end-to-end networking. So anything that connects to a network, whether it be fiber, switches, APs, wireless, PoE, hotspot gateway connectivity, and manage them via cloud, remotely, or in the location itself in standalone mode. We have that whole kind of solution there for you to choose how and what you want to do business in the networking space. So today we're going to cover more on the wired side of the connectivity with the Ethernet. And all of our platforms today are powered by our Nebula Cloud platform. So any new products that come out, they typically will have built-in Nebula support. So whether it be free or on the paid MSP side of things. And I'll tell a little bit more about why Nebula is important for these kinds of products in general. But the XMG is one of the added names that we've added to our kind of a list. So just to cover it real quick as partners, ES is our Ethernet switch. That's usually 100 megabit connectivity. GS is our gigabit switch. MG tends to refer to multi-gig. They tend to have maybe 10 gig as well, but they're more like multi-gig switches, 2.5, etc. XS is a gigabit or sorry, a 10 gig switch. The X is just a Roman numeral for 10. So they typically are all 10 gig capable ports, even though they are technically multi-gig, since it will auto negotiate, any lower speeds that it can support. XGS is a gigabit switch by nature, but it has 10 gig uplink ports. And the XMG, those are all ports that support multi-gig with 10 gig uplinks. So it's kind of like a hybrid from that XGS switch that you saw, or that's right above it. If it ends in HP, it stands for like high powered PoE, which is usually a PoE plus switch. We don't have any regular PoE switches. It's all PoE plus or PoE plus plus. EP is usually like eco power. So it's kind of like a lower power budget, but gives you still all the ports. Maybe some partial ports are, maybe half of the ports are powered. So again, it gives you a benefit in terms of cost if you're looking for more of an economy type switch. PoE, if it has an FP in it, it's kind of a really bigger power budget switch. And if it ends in just an F, then it's a fiber switch, meaning the main ports are fiber, and it may have some additional copper ports there, but traditionally it'll be for fiber applications and deployments. And if it has SFP ports, means it's gigabit ports for fiber, and SFP plus is for 10 gig fiber ports. And we have associate modules, et cetera, for it, as well as direct attached cables. So whether you want 1 gig, 10 gig, or the 10 gig direct attached cables helps you to maybe uplink switches easier using 10 gig with those direct attached cables. So they come in 1 meter and 3 meter kind of options there. So there are kind of pre-built cables. So PoE is a very important application. I wanted to share some of the new technologies that are here. A long time ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, we were in the PoE space where you had 15.4 watts. Then we saw 30 watts really taking over. So PoE Plus is the 30 watt 802.3 AT. And the newest one that you're going to see more of available in our switches and in the market is PoE Plus Plus, is Ultra PoE, and that supports up to 60 watts of power. So it's 802.3 BT. But you have to also know some additional information when you're dealing with this. Now you're going from an upgrade where you're going from a 30 watt power to a 60 watt power. You need to know what kind of cabling will support that as well. So typically the PoE Plus, you can support Plus can be on the Cat 5e, Cat 6, and Cat 6a, but the throughput is going to be important because now you're dealing with multi-gig. All of these support the 1 gig at 100 meters. And so you can see 2.5 meters. All these cables will also support that at 2.5. And then on the 5 gig side, also at 100 meters, the one that you really have to worry about in terms of copper for 10 gig is 10 gig can only be supported then on a Cat 6a going to the full 100 meters. I think you can, with Cat 6, you can get like 50 meters out of it. So just keep that in mind when you're delivering both PoE and throughput through these. Most of the applications that we'll be talking about to utilize this kinds of 2.5, 5 gig applications typically is on the wireless side, where you have a wireless access point that has a 2.5 or 5 gig uplink port with PoE that needs, ultra PoE potentially to power those higher powered APs. So those applications is what's going to be driving a lot of this infrastructure to make sure that the more than 1 gig support is available. So that plus the PoE. So here are some of the devices that potentially will use the new PoE. So wireless 6E, like I mentioned, not only does it have higher throughput, higher bandwidth capacity, but then it needs also the higher power to manage those APs. If you need pan tilt zoom cameras, they won't need maybe the bandwidth per se, but they will need the power. You also have the ability to power now laptop computers or console type computers right through the Ethernet port without a power supply. So that's another big application. Or access controls, POS readers, nurse call stations, information kiosks that are being powered purely on that PoE may or may not need the bandwidth, but it possibly be just in case, like let's say you have a kiosk that's providing a hotspot to the area and you have more than 1 gig of connection that you want to supply to that to facilitate that internet connection, then definitely it will be PoE plus as in addition to the multi-gig support. So in the past, you had, your AC devices are using their 30 watts, maybe some IP phones, some other pan tilt cameras, et cetera. But majority of things are going to start to move to the 60 watt as it's becoming more available, people are going to be building more applications, more functionality that will require more power. So we'll see some more of that in the demand of ultra PoE type devices. So to connect them in this kind of a switch, like an XMG 1930-30 HP. So the 30 HP is PoE and PoE plus. It's kind of a hybrid, but not all ports are PoE plus plus. So keep that in mind in order to keep costs down as we're going through this transitional. We're producing these kinds of switches to have that kind of mixed networks there to meet both existing networks plus 6E networks that you may be deploying as well, or maybe other devices that are using ultra PoE for that. But we'll still adopt all of the multi-gig capabilities. So this will also future-proof you into the Wi-Fi 7, because I think majority of the APs that are out there in the market today are still in the 30 watt space. It's getting closer to the needing more than 30. In our case, in our portfolio, there's only two APs, the highest end models, WAX 640Ss and the WAX 650Ss, that require that PoE plus standard. So it draws, potentially max draws 28 watts, which is over the usable amount of the 30 watts. So be careful of that as well. You may see this as the max power is 28, and you'll look at the standard on normal PoE plus as a 30 watt standard, and you'll think, oh well, I could use my 30 watt switch for that WAX 640S. But in fact, there's overhead, and there's not always, it's not perfect power. So there's not 30 watts exactly. So there's a lot less. It's usually like 27 watts or so, I think is the standard on how much power you can, actually usable power. So that won't be enough. The product will boot up. The product will come online, but in a degraded mode. You may notice some lights, maybe, orange or amber, and it doesn't, or something's flashing while it's on. It will still provide, but usually one of the radios may be turned off because it doesn't have enough power. So it will still provide connectivity. You may think it's working, and you may notice it's kind of slower. Maybe it's one of the radios is the slower radio that it's on. So it's not fully utilizing its full capacity. So make sure you keep that in mind, that you have enough power to power some of these applications and know kind of the difference as now we're pushing up to that edge. Most of all of our portfolio, like the other models, they're all under 20 something watts. So under the 30 watt power budget there. So you should be able to use these ports on, the green side with the PoE plus, and then the orange side for the PoE plus for the other one. So they're designated by color on our switches themselves, as well as on the LEDs on these products. So they will tell you what it's negotiated at and what power it's utilizing in that LED. You can also obviously see this on the web. It is a web managed switch, so within the interface of itself, as well as when you have it in the Nebula Cloud platform. So managing it in the cloud, you get this kind of visibility as well. So it's an ideal solution to upgrade your network when, again, if you're needing something with layer 3 functionality, you can add that to the switch through a licensing model as a one-time fee. But it also then provides you both types of PoE, so you can have that mixed network. Maybe the 6E is providing kind of a point-to-point connection that's in a wireless space, in a signal space that's not saturated. So there's less interference in the 6E. So you can have more of a point-to-point node within that office space, or maybe even externally. And then providing internet connectivity and multi-gig connectivity to users, to by the ports, or to devices or servers, etc., using these other ports that are multi-gig capable, or even 10 gig capable for the uplinks. We've also redesigned our UI within our Nebula platform. So some of you will be attending. We have a webinar coming up on Thursday. So if you haven't signed up for it, we've had quite a big turnout so far, registered people, partners who want to learn more about this new GUI interface. Obviously, if you already have it, you can surf around your account already. But we've had questions on where do we find certain things, maybe vouchers, etc., because some of those may have moved to different menu. So if you want to join that, check out our webinar page so we can kind of walk you through and answer any questions that you may have with our engineers there. So this enhancement is hopefully to help make it more clear on the cloud side and where the information is. It's based on a lot of the feedbacks that we've been getting from partners and implementing that into the system to help kind of everyone out. The XS1930, just as a reminder, this is our 10 gig multi-gig switch. It's mostly all 10 gig ports. We have a fiber version and a copper version using existing Cat5, Cat6 cabling, and one with a PoE option as well. So you can see down at the very bottom, that is our 8-port PoE++. It has, in an 8-port system, 375 watts of power. So you can imagine that's a lot of power in 8 ports. It's close to, not quite full 60 watt per port, but again, most devices aren't using that full maximum power anyways. And our products have what we call a smart intelligent PoE, where it will only count the usage or the draw from the devices against the budget. So we don't assign the full 60 watt of the budget for a device that might be consuming 32. So that way you can load balance and have more devices be powered up by our switches than maybe typical other switches that are out there. But for 8 ports, 375, it's probably well more than enough for most of your applications. And this is kind of a go-to switch when you want to deploy, like you've standardized fully on a a 6E type or high-end Wi-Fi 6 deployment that uses the 5 gig uplink plus ultra PoE power. So this would give you the maximum kind of throughput as well. So just make sure you keep that in mind. Some of our partners had initially thought, hey, power is just fine, but then they run into maybe coverage issues because one radio is off, or maybe performance issue not meeting up to the standards or what they thought. So after troubleshooting, we found out that they weren't using enough power within that PoE switch to allow for it to go to full capacity. So just keep that in mind. We want us to all learn from things. So we want to share that to you to make sure that you don't have that pitfall in your deployment. So the XMG 1930 series is what we kind of came here to talk about. I did cover a lot of multi-gig as well, but this is kind of the bread and butter of multi-gig here. It has the 24 port with PoE, with ultra PoE built in there as well. You can see on that bottom switch, there's like a bunch of yellow ports. Those are normal PoE ports. And then all the orange ones, those are all PoE++ capable ports. And all of them are going to be doing, either 1 gig or 2.5 gig multi-gig. And then there's those 4 that are part of that orange that will do 1 gig, 2.5, 5 gig, and 10 gig copper, as well as 2 additional SFP plus 10 gig ports. So there's 8 ports of 60 watt PoE, 20 ports of 30 watt PoE. So quite a bit in a 700 watt PoE power budget. So much larger than we would typically find in a 24 port standard 24 port gigabit switch today. So this is kind of just the markings kind of broken down on the ports and budgets there and how they're assigned on these switches. So the XMG 1930-30 is a gigabit switch or multi-gig switch with no PoE, whereas the bottom one is the XMG 1930-30 HP. It has a total of 30 ports, but has that PoE plus and PoE++ power capable. All right. And we've been deploying these. All of our switches have been one of the first in the industry that actually uses a 5-color LED to designate all the different connection speeds that are there. So in a single LED, you can get an amber, which is 100 megabits per second, green, which is your typical gigabit. And then now you'll see the sky blue 2.5, a purple connection or purple light that will be a 5 gig connection, and then a dark blue that will denote 10 gig connectivity. So if you have a mixed network, it's going to be quite a colorful, rack there with these blinking lights that are going to be there when you're setting traffic. So it's pretty nice looking on a rack that way, but it'll also tell you information about not just that link speed, but cloud access, whether it's uploading a configuration, whether it's trying to sync to the cloud. All of those things are there on these LEDs as well. I did mention that these switches support layer 3. They don't do it by default out of the box, but you're able to basically upgrade it and use that same platform into a layer 3 application. So many of you may have an RFP that's out there where the customer is requiring layer 3 switches, and we can add on that licensing to basically turn the XMG 1930 with those added layer 3 with CLI, command line interfaces, different VLAN management, stacking, mapping, isolations. Now the layer 2 side already has VLAN, already has bandwidth control, etc. So that's already there. This just gives you that layer 3 level of MAC control based VLANs, or protocol based VLANs, or subnet based VLANs. So it can automatically, put traffic or MAC addresses into specific VLANs in the process there. It adds also additional security protections that you find in our 2220 series type switches and above, with that kind of layer 3 add-on there, as well as the network AV mode. So if you're using these XMGs in an application like audio video over IP, the network AV protocols there, then you would want to have this functionality to help you and facilitate your installations for network AV. So it really puts it into this this mode, helps you to configure the MVR, the MDL snooping, any kind of flow control, diff serves. And when you map that within the Nebula platform, it also has some AI to help with the decision making on moving that traffic better and more efficiently to make sure your video traffic and audio traffic is as as efficient as possible without any interruption. So that's something to keep in mind. And with CLI connectivity, now you can do scripting, you can access it via command line or SSH or Telnet in a secure way as well, without having to go through the GUI interface. Now, some of you may already be using Nebula today. We've added a feature called kind of like tunneling mode. And what tunneling mode allows for you to do with these switches now is you can actually click a link and it tunnels into the device, where you can then issue command line interfaces. So I know in the past, some of our partners have said, hey, the standalone switch, when you use CLI, has a fuller and richer feature set than on the Nebula side, because it's a little bit more simplified platform. So if you want to do more of the advanced things that you did in CLI, this tunnel mode allows for you to bridge that gap. It tunnels basically to the device and allows for you to do all of the CLI commands as if you were using it in standalone mode. So now it's kind of the best of both worlds. You can have this these devices and switches standardized, whether you were using it in a kind of a standalone mode or in the Nebula Cloud, but gives you the full Nebula Cloud management and visibility, and still have access to those feature functions. So those are one-time licenses. So you just have to associate that and activate it in your MyZyxel. It's pretty easy. You just log into your MyZyxel account, which you've used for licensing of devices, for Nebula, for your security. You register the device, register the license key, link that license to the device, and now you can see that it goes online. So the device will open up that functionality for you within that. So this is just kind of the interface that you'll see there. Once you log into the device on the Nebula side, it'll say your service, their status is layer 3 access license standard with no expiration. So you also have to make sure that your switch is able to access myzyxel.com in order for it to update that status information and then keep that up to date. All of our switches are designed with quality in mind. We have some patented SFP module designs so that it can recover from different error modes. So it allows for you to, manage it in a way that it kind of recovers by itself without you having to roll a truck out there to maybe look at it or fix it, or maybe even unplug and plugging it back in. It has a way to detect that. Thermal designs can range from -20 degrees Celsius to 50 degrees Celsius. The fans are smart in that it only kind of pulls in as it needs to, so it keeps really the noise levels down. When you look at our noise levels on our data sheets, it's pretty competitive, pretty low in that regard. Most of these are going to be deployed in a rack mount anyways. You typically wouldn't have like a 30-port switch unless you're in your lab. You wouldn't have a 30-port switch sitting on, your front desk, so it's going to be on in a closet. It's going to be in a rack somewhere. So that's usually not too much of a concern, but just overall noise. But for quality, we use solid state capacitors to make sure that they don't break in bursts in the use. So you can look at our mean time between failures ratings there, and they're going to be very high. It's going to last a very long time for these switches in terms of component lifetime. And then power noise filters also to enhance the stability of the product, to make sure the power that's coming in is stable. So we take all these into account, make sure our products then last longer, which is why we can offer a lifetime warranty on our products, and we stand by that. The other kind of product in this mix in the portfolio is our XS3800. It's been out for a couple of years now, but this is kind of a hybrid switch. It has multi-gig ports. It has 10 gig ports. It has a lot of SFP plus ports. So it's kind of a concentrator to kind of bridge maybe other XMGs to this kind of central, maybe this is your main switch hub. This would be kind of that core network space or in your data center to providing all these different types of connectivity and linking them all together. All of our products have like link aggregation, so your lags, so you can increase them. So rather than just having a single 10-port uplink or 10 gig uplink, you can have multi-gig 10 ports. So it can be a 20 port if you lag 2 ports. If you lag 3 or 4 ports, you can then do 40 gigs of connectivity between the switches or between you and maybe the XMGs. So just think about that as you're building it out and your different topologies there as you're utilizing these. So in a typical standalone mode application, you'll have some sort of gateway firewall system. You'll have an XMG 1930 in there, maybe some servers that have 2.5. We're finding a lot of laptops today are already doing 2.55 and 10 gig connectivity on the laptop Ethernet port, or they'll be using Wi-Fi 6 or Wi-Fi 6E Wi-Fi in the laptops that are selling today, kind of the higher end models today. So you'll definitely want to look at and see what kind of APs will support that, and then be able to make sure that those APs will have 2.55 gig uplinks, because it's going to support multiple gigs of throughput connectivity. So if you want those laptops and those machines to take advantage of this increased speed and the chipsets that they already have, then you have to kind of flush through and refresh your existing infrastructure network to make sure that can facilitate that. Of course, right now, probably the biggest deal is going to be your WAN connections, and they're going to be the bottleneck, because you're not going to be able to get very easily in most places around the country, 2.5, 5 gig or 10 gig kind of connections. But within the local network, if you have, 10 gig servers or storage access, then that makes it a lot easier or a lot faster to do those kinds of backups very quickly and very easily there. So this is what we will typically find kind of in a mixed network environment here. And then for maybe fiber applications, you may have these XMGs going, fiber from an XS3800s to an XMG 1930s. And then those are maybe delivering out to the home, or fiber to the building, or fiber to the room in the building as well. So you can do that. We do have an XMG 30F, I believe, that's coming out, as well as a different switch model that's a kind of a mixed network, the 2220s, that will have a F version as well. So if you're looking at doing more fiber to the prem, fiber to the home, fiber to the apartment, and you have access to that as you're deploying as kind of a small MSP per se, then we have a lot of fiber application type switches that you should take a look at, and we can help you with that if that's some of your applications that you're doing today. As kind of a direct competitive model, when you look at it, the Ubiquity model there on the lower end space, kind of how it lines up with what Zyxel has. Theirs is a 48 port compared to our 30 port. We don't have yet a 48 port version of the XMG, but that's going to be into the future. But a lot of the things that we could do is we can still have the same power budget, even though ours is a 30 port versus theirs is a 48 port PoE. I think the biggest thing will be that our switching capacity is always non-blocking, bi-directional. So upload and download at the same time, full port speed. Whereas a lot of the other competitors, or maybe Ubiquity, will have either a half or partial So they save up on memory or they save up on actual processing. So keep that in mind when you're looking at these kinds of comparisons. So in general, overall, our switching network in itself, like I said earlier, supports VLAN, supports being able to auto detect the different PoE power devices. It uses that intelligent PoE. It's made for CCTV applications or IPTV applications, as well as the wireless. And it uses machine learning to identify any kind of network issues, broadcast storms, blocking, and be able to help correct that. Or give you information on what you could do to correct that to make sure that the quality of the service is best as possible. Again, we're using wireless, we're using all these other applications on this infrastructure. And usually if the infrastructure is bad, those other applications is what typically get blamed for the poor service, right? If you have it plugged into a lower powered PoE, or it's just a gigabit PoE, and the AP is supposed to support multi-gig, you're going to get complaints that, hey, we deployed this 5 gig, AP capable. I have a 5 gig capable laptop. Why am I not seeing those speeds to my server, right? That is on-prem. So people are smart about it. A lot of your customers do these kinds of tests or speed tests online if they have a big enough connection to kind of challenge it, to make sure that what they're paying for is what they're getting. And this Nebula Cloud also gives you that visibility into the network. So while you're deploying these switches, you can see the topology. You can look at it from a virtual stack standpoint. You can look at per device information, connected devices. So you can drill into and find out, hey, I see an AP on port number 34. You click on 34, it drills in, shows you the MAC address information. And if it's an access point, then it may be within the access point connectivity, which then you can then see who are the devices that are connected to that access point, right? So you can go either from the switch on up to the individual devices, or troubleshooting a specific device and looking at what access point it's connected to and what is that port AP is connected to which port in the switch, and visualize that and see that all within this managed interface, and be able to provide real-time support, real-time interaction with that port as well. So you can maybe enter a PoE or power cycle, a single PoE port via this remote interface, and we provide you also with remote diagnostic tools. So you can do cable testing, fiber testing from this remote side on the switch through the Nebula Cloud Platform. And the beauty of the Nebula Cloud Platform as well is you don't have to build your own VPN backdoor to manage this. So even in a break fix type environment, this gives you access to visibility, like a full MSP would have, without having to build all these, these systems to give you that kind of access and visibility. And it also has some, network resilience as well, and security that we take in mind on the switch side, making sure ports are secured using 802.1x authentication with ACLs, network protection with Loop Guard, DHCP Guard, all of these that we typically don't think, but as we deploy more into this space, you have potentially security issues where somebody may plug in additional access points, or they'll plug in their own routers when they find an Ethernet port to try to gain access. So you're able to use switch security to turn off or be able to kind of prevent that from happening, and making sure that that is as secure as possible. We're able to use Nebula to help automate auto provisioning, auto deployment of configurations, cloud backup. You can set that to auto backup, where you can use that to restore. But in a break fix environment, this is going to be the beauty of it, is if you have switches that are deployed that have a certain identity, you can swap out that switch, put a new one, and apply it to that site, and it will then gain that identity of that group. So now you have the switch now is basically reconfigured without you having to do very much effort in terms of any kind of extra configuration there. So it really helps with the hassle-free deployment, speeds that up, gives you access to deployment in areas where you may not have as much reach. It could be as easy as scanning the QR code on the devices themselves and on the box packaging. One thing that did come up, recently with our partners is when you do use Nebula, there is an option within Nebula which on our webinar on Thursday, we'll probably show you where that is as well. But there's always been this option in Nebula that you can turn off per customer per site, the ability to use that QR scanner to override like anything. So to add it to your account. The reason why is because if you accidentally scan it and put it into someone else's account, then it will move that device to a different your other account. So we want to make sure you have that ability and that control and understand what that means, so that you can decide, like, most of our customers use it because it's easy. If they do move a device from one site of a customer to another, they don't have to go through the offboarding of one site. If they don't have the management, the MSP level view, they don't have to like deassociate it and reassociate it back in. They can kind of move it over as they have physical possession of the device. It allows for you to scale very easily, whether you have just a couple of customers that you manage, or maybe you have a mixed group of customers that you manage. Maybe some is more of a break fix, but then the other group is, MSP level active management. You can choose what mixture of customers within this interface and scale from a 5-user deployment to maybe a retail chain that has 200 stores. You can scale that way very easily with our Nebula platform. And it's managed all under a single pane of glass. And then there's no additional hardware or software. So some of our competitors, you need an additional cloud key. You might need to install a server on the prem. You might need to have a computer that's designated at that prem in order for it to collect the information or to manage it. Nope, it's all managed, and it's all housed within the agent in the devices themselves. So whether you're using purely just our access points, or just our switches, or just our gateways, they can all be managed in that Nebula Cloud platform. But of course, if you use all of the whole stack of the network, there's benefits in that in terms of cross security, cross communication between the devices to onboarding them, et cetera. And from a security level, that can make it a lot easier, a lot better from a security to secure your network. And you can launch it within minutes. I mentioned, scanning that QR code. It basically will call home. The devices will say, hey, who am I? Who do I belong to? It gets the firmware, it gets the configuration file. Now that is ready to go. So you don't need anybody on site that is, technical or network, certified to do any kind of real configuration. That can already be pre-done in the cloud by your techs, sitting in their office or at the NOC. So that can already be pre-done before it even gets installed. So that's the beauty of it. And it gives you access and information anytime, anywhere you have internet connectivity. Where their browser, it's all on the browser or on our app. So you can use a laptop, tablets, mobile devices to get visibility and access to help you configure, help you to manage, get visibility on maybe alerts, alarms from that. So there's a real benefit in that, especially again, with these kinds of applications, wireless and IP cameras and access of those higher bandwidths is becoming more critical, that those networks stay live and is available without interruption, because with any interruption of that kind of network, there's going to be loss of productivity, loss of customers, loss of clients, et cetera, that are being able to connect to that application. So we want to minimize that as best as possible. So give you the information before your customers probably even know that something is wrong. So you should be the first to know. And it gives you that network clarity and information when you need the most. When you're in that situation where a customer calls you and says, I'm having poor connectivity, my voice calls are getting dropped, my wireless is not connecting, or it's slow, you now have network visibility that you can go into and look at the logs, look at the actual device Wi-Fi, connection speeds and signal strength, and be able to use that information to determine what potentially is wrong or what are the remediation steps that can come into play. So really, from a break fix model, I personally, as an IT kind of person, I would never want to install something that I don't have visibility over, unless it's a, set it, forget it, and I'm never going to worry about you again kind of customer. But today, day and age, it's all about being able to have this information to troubleshoot. You don't want to have to send somebody out there on a truck roll and then find out, oh, they just needed to power cycle this box or this AP and now it works, or to power cycle this camera and it works now, right? So You don't want to have to spend that kind of money, especially if the customer is not paying for it. Then, this can help you, alleviate a lot of those costs. Guest network access as well, being able to control that with a captive portal for your customers and manage it via this cloud platform is a great benefit, great add-on to your customers. I'm sure a lot of you already have, hey, you're already doing the internet connection. Can you add on Wi-Fi? Can you add on a guest network so my customers can connect to it? And then it's all updatable, and all the firmwares, et cetera, are pushed on to these devices through the internet. So it makes it really easy. It has that built-in management portal view, multiple organizations, multiple sites. You can then use two-factor authentication for connectivity. Maybe you're doing VPN or Wi-Fi. We can use that and manage all of those user licenses, et cetera. We currently have over 100 devices now supported in Nebula, including these XMGs, 1930s. So take a look at that range. If you go to zyxel.com/Nebula, you'll be able to see those devices, as well as be able to have access to the Nebula login demo as well. So check that out. We have kind of with Nebula, especially with this particular product, it's Nebula Flex capable. So Nebula Flex means that you can add it into Nebula and you can use it as a free, or you can buy the Pro license to give it the Pro license features. So Nebula Flex can become it. Some of our other products you'll see in the naming, you'll say Nebula Flex Pro in the model. And the Pro models just means that it comes with the 1-year licenses of Nebula Pro included within that package bundle. So you have the options of whether you want the licensing version or not. But you have the option to use it, like I just mentioned, free. There's a free cloud option that gives you that visibility. So there's really no reason for most of our partners, if the product is Nebula capable, to not use it in Nebula. If there's just some other reason, maybe there's just a feature in the standalone that is, can't be used at all. But in this particular case with our switches, now with the tunneling mode, you should be able to use the CLI capable functionality in these switches today. So there's no reason for you to not have this kind of visibility in the cloud platform to manage your customers. So we distribute through D&H, Ingram, TD SYNNEX now, Wave, Target Distribution, and Pace International. If you're not currently a partner, we would love for you to sign up and become a partner. We have 3 tiers, bronze, silver, and gold. We want you to get to gold. The only requirement is in a 6-month period, you do 12K of business to maintain that. There's no other cost to you. So as you're doing business, as you're growing, you're gaining benefits as well. If you're new to the program, you'll be in our tier, our silver tier to start. We do have events that go on that can help you boost to gold just by attending these events. So keep those in mind. If you want to connect with us, you can connect with us at Zyxel-US-channel on LinkedIn. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn if you just search for Zyxel Try. That's TRI. And on YouTube, you can see these webinars, a lot of other information webinars and technical webinars at Zyxel America channel as well. And I did talk about some of these events. If you want, you could scan that QR code right here. It will take you to our TOPGOLF events that we're running every month with our partner Zultis and our distributor Target Distribution. These TOPGOLF events are a great opportunity for you to come out to these cities if you're nearby and meet up with Zyxel and hear more about how voice side of it and unified communications on top of Zyxel's networking is the best option for you to provide kind of the whole solution, both on the networking side and the voice side, to make sure that you are the owner of all the IPs within that network and the entire solution, to make sure that these applications like voice or Wi-Fi has the best network quality to ensure that those applications are being delivered properly. So come by, scan that QR code. We have a list of all the events there on that page and the dates that are available coming up. We're going to be next time in Atlanta, I believe, in a couple of weeks. So if you're around the Atlanta area, Florida, or nearby, that maybe that you may want to either fly or drive to. We've had a lot of partners. We had one partner last week, when we held it in Chicago, They drove 8 hours from Lincoln, Nebraska, to Chicago in order to meet with us and to be able to spend some time together at this event. So it's really beneficial. It's a lot of fun, a lot of information, informative as well. But it's a good, a relationship building event. And so I invite you to come, and whoever you have on your team as well, you're welcome to come down and visit us. So look forward to seeing you guys there at a future show. So if you have any questions, this is your turn. We have a couple minutes. If you want to ask any questions, feel free to use the Q&A section. If you have any questions there, we can do some more deep dives. We'll have some trainings more on like maybe configurations, best practices of our switches in general, because we do use the same overall general kind of functionality firmware that we've designed. And so a lot of the feature sets that you're configuring today in the existing switches will also apply to a multi-gig switch. So the same web managed type functionality switching, it's now the bandwidth and the ports are just different. PoE ports are just different. So just some of those pitfalls that I mentioned earlier, that would be, advantageous for you to keep in mind as you go through your process. If there are no questions, if you happen to think of some, or if you're typing something right now, but we don't get to it, you can always email me, try@zyxel.com. Or again, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, then please do that. And you can always send me a message there as well. Love to talk to you, figure out how, when, why, with what customers and what products to deploy, especially with the XMG series. We want you to be comfortable with it, but also understand what and when to use it, and what kind of scenarios that may require the higher PoE power as well as the higher throughput bandwidth. So if you're looking at deploying Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 6E, Wi-Fi 7 coming in the future, this is the switch that you're going to have to move to in order to make sure that that infrastructure can facilitate those advanced applications. So again, thank you for your time. I love talking to you all, and hope that you have the great rest of your day, rest of your week. And I'll look forward to talking to you again at another Tech Talk. My name is Troy, and we would be talking to you soon. Have a good day.